Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of We3Live. I'm Erin Otan with Z Prime and very excited to introduce today's conversation. We're going to be hearing from George Hunt of Smart Energy Water and Sanjay Banga, the president of transmission and distribution at Tata Power. Sanjay is with us all the way from India today, so we're very fortunate to have him. And we're going to hear a little bit about Sanjay's background, what he's done in his past, and then also what Tata Power is planning for right now and for in the future. So we're all really looking forward to this conversation. And George, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Erin. Welcome to We3. Today I have the absolute privilege of being joined by Mr. Sanjay Banga, as Erin said, President of Transmission and Distribution of the Tata Power Company Limited, one of the leading innovators in grid resilience, smart meter technology and customer engagement. So I'm really looking forward to this one. So welcome, Sanjay. It's great to share this platform with you today. I hope you and your family are keeping safe and well, and how are you?
Uh, Thanks, George. I am absolutely fine and safe with family. It's my pleasure and privilege to be with you to share my thoughts on T&D sector in India. Would love to have discussion on how power sector is shaping up in India.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. So, just by way of a quick introduction, as I mentioned, Mr. Sanjay heads the transmission and distribution business in Tata Power. Before this, he was Chief Executive Officer of Tata Power Delhi Distribution Limited, a public-private partnership of Tata Power and the government of the National Capital Territory of Delhi. Here he was part of a core team who transformed what was seen as an ailing utility with 53% loss level to becoming a recognized benchmark utility in India. Mr. Sanjay has been at Tata Power Company for 18 months now, and as a company, it is also now a front runner in implementing the smart grid vision for India, specifically in the areas of end-to-end solutions for IT and grid modernization, building transmission lines and distribution infrastructure, operating and maintaining that infrastructure to provide resilience and efficiency, and building future capacity and energy management services. Tata Power is also gearing towards being future ready, leading the charge for innovation and regulatory change, as well as helping utilities adopt and deploy state-of-the-art technologies across the entire power value chain of conventional and renewable energy services. He's also involved in the adoption of next-generation customer solutions to provide seamless experiences. Wow, that's an amazing responsibility, Sanjay, and an amazing opportunity. Before we get to know you a little more about you on a personal level, can you build a little bit upon the incredible work of Tata Power Company and perhaps share a little more about the key areas that you're focused on today?
Sure, George. Tata Power is a 100-year-old company. It started with setting up hydropower plant around 110 years back when we first time Mumbai get electricity was from Tata Power. So it's a 110-year-old company. And it covers the complete value chain of power sector in terms that we have a generation capacity of around 10,000 megawatt plus. Then we have a transmission company. We have a joint venture with Government of India, which brings we transmit power from Bhutan to India. So that's a transmission company known as Power Link Corporation Limited. Then trading company which knows Tata Power Trading. And we also are in a very big way in the renewable, and we also manufacture solar modules as such. So it covers the renewable part, transmission part. And on distribution part, we have distribution licensee for 6 distribution utilities, 4 in state of Odisha, 1 in capital of India, Delhi, and in Mumbai, and also 1 city in other states. So that covers that complete portfolio of Tata Power. It's a 100-year-old company, as I said. My role is more of transmission and distribution. So the entire growth of Tata Power in transmission and distribution, whether it's a national or it's an international, that's what I cover. And I cover both. The one is the distribution, transmission, and the third vertical, which we are focusing, and that's going to take more shape in time to come, is distribution services. As we find consumer is more interested in energy management services rather than just getting electricity. That's going to be the focus area in time to come for Tata Power.
That's fantastic. Actually, that's a really interesting uh, response to what's happening in the distribution sector. That you're building a third element of the company around distribution services. So hopefully we'll get a little chance to talk about that as we go forward. Am I right in thinking that you're also international as well? You're also providing some international services?
So we have good presence in Africa. So let's say, for example, in Nigeria, there are three distribution utility we have where we have the management consulting and we provide complete technical solutions to them. In fact, the day-to-day management is with Tata Power in that way, but not in a very big way because we feel distribution is a hardcore localized subject in countries, and so you should have a good knowledge of local dynamics there. So we are not much in international area except a few consulting assignments like one which I mentioned you.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay. So with the we three sessions, we quite like to, before we get into the detail of the conversation, we quite like to know a little bit more about you personally. So I've got a couple of quick questions for you. Um, so you've had such a great career in this industry. Can you tell me a little more about how you came to work in the energy and power sector? Maybe summarize the question as, did energy find you or did you find energy?
It's a good one. So I did my undergrad in electrical engineering, and that time getting a job was something as kind of an accomplishment because the job market in India was not that good in 1980s 90s. So I passed out in '89, and immediately I got a chance to serve NTPC, which is the largest power generation company in India. So I worked in generation sector for good 10 years, and then when Delhi was privatized, I got chance to switch from generation to distribution. So in that way, I'm lucky that I have a good exposure to generation sector as well as to the distribution sector. So you can call me a complete power sector veteran in that way. But yes, I love this sector much.
I think to have an appreciation across the whole value chain is really important, and I'm sure the company is really benefiting from that holistic experience that you've had. My next question is sort of similar. Is there's so much innovation and change going on in this sector at the moment, and I don't think we've ever been in such an exciting phase of change and transformation. So as you look forward into the future and you're making key decisions for technology, for investment, for change and new business models, etc., what do you see on the horizon that you think will have the most impactful and lasting sort of effect on future generations? What's the craziest thing that you see that might happen in the future that will impact this?
Uh, George, I see clearly two dimensions which are coming in future. One is the decarbonization, and you see each country is going in a very big way on decarbonization. In Tata Power, we have decided by 2050 we will be net carbon zero. So decarbonization is leading us to focus more and more green power. In the rural area of India, we are focusing more on microgrid concepts of a decentralized generation. The second big force which I am finding is coming is a digitalization, and it is something which is not just covering the production part, but is covering the entire value chain of power sector as such. So decarbonization and digitalization are the two waves I am finding which is completely covering the power sector the way it is changing. And the point which I discussed with you, the complete earlier model where the was a single flow from generation to distribution. Now the way you find the consumer is becoming prosumer, and he himself started generating power, and the EV in off-peak period is delivering power to grid. The entire complexity of grid is becoming very interesting subject in time to come, and this stabilization will need new technologies. So that's something which is really crazy, and I would say we are lucky when we are seeing this phase of power sector.
I agree with you. I bet you could never imagine a day. If we look back over the years, I bet we could never have foreseen a day where there would be the concept of a prosumer. We just think about building assets, making services available, and those services being consumed. So the idea that we're all participants in this value chain is it's truly game changing, I think, for us. So yeah, we might explore a little bit about that as the time goes. So my last sort of speed question to you is, as a global leader within one of the world's most innovative and important power companies in a region of the world that's known on focusing on the future, what piece of advice would you have for would you have given yourself at the start of your career, or what piece of advice would you give to somebody that you know that is just about to start their career in this industry?
Mm, George, I would say those who wants to be in this kind of a utility business or power sector business which serves consumers. First thing, the way digitalization is driving power sector, the engineers or those who are aspiring to have career in this sector, they should have good attitude of learning because the technology changes very fast. There is, I would say, the rapid speed of change in technology. So someone who actually really want to do in this sector should have a good attitude of learning. The second is this sector is very deeply connected to consumer. So customer centricity is something who is passionate about consumer need, who wants to give a different consumer a different experience to consumer. So those guys, I think would be very successful in this sector.
Actually, I think that's great advice. That's great advice for everyone, I think, isn't it? In the sense that we should always be learning. I can imagine in your career you've never stopped learning at all. Every day so there's something to learn, and I think the sector is benefiting massively around the world from putting the customer or putting the citizen at the heart. I quite like the concept of the citizen in the sense that it's not just about consuming electricity or consuming power and water. It's really about the ethical way in which that energy is sourced, so that I care as a citizen, not just as a customer. I think that's really interesting. Okay, those are fantastic answers. Thanks very much. I think what we'll do is we'll use a bit of our time now to talk a little bit more in more detail around grid resilience, customer engagement, and perhaps changing regulation that is happening around you. So I've got a few questions here, which I wouldn't mind getting on with. So my first question relates to something that's affecting all of us, which was the impact of COVID alongside rapidly changing regulation. So about 6 months ago, you were a guest speaker on the WE3 2020 summit. The topic of the panel that you were on was titled "The Future of India's Smart and Sustainable Infrastructure." And on this panel, you mentioned that smart metering and digitalization had really accelerated during COVID, and that key customers were now asking regulators to help roll out smart meters for the entire consumer base. I also recall how you mentioned how consumer data from these meters has helped utilities get more engaged with customers, and how things like digital payments have gone from 50% to 97% during COVID. But you also mentioned that there were barriers to innovation in India, particularly with regard to strict regulation and the extent of government monopolies. So my question is, we're now 6 months on, a lot has changed. Could you provide us with a little bit of an update on where you are and how you're getting value from smart metering, and how your conversation with regulators is going with regard to investment?
Yeah, George, I recollect that discussion. Um, I mentioned one very important point. The impact of COVID will be felt by distribution utilities in after 1 year. Because what happened in India, the tariff structure in India is like that commercial and industrial consumer pays more and domestic consumer pays less. So there is a subsidizing category, there is a subsidized category. So customer commercial and industrial demand had gone steeply low. I would say that the demand was uh, down was almost 30 to 50% during the COVID period. And these are the consumers who are paying more to distribution utilities. Now, after 6 months, we find that because of the less revenue, less collection, these distribution utilities are financially in problem. They were earlier incurring losses, now they are in deep problem. So impact of COVID is now felt by distribution utility. That time they felt need of smart metering because billing and collection both were becoming serious issue because of the restricted movement during COVID period. After 6 months, there is a development. Federal government has come with a package and where they are supporting all its distribution utilities that okay, you go ahead with the smart metering and we will give you some funding on that. So many distribution utilities have now come out with RFPs or what we call request for proposal or tenders in market for implementing smart metering. So what they thought earlier was required, now there are actions in field. Now, these smart metering models, because distribution utilities are not having cash and they cannot spend money, they are coming with very innovative models. They are asking for solution where a solution provider can supply smart meter, install small smart meters, and manage entire system and increase revenue of utility. Whatever the incremental revenue which a utility gets, the part of that they want to share with solution providers. So it's a kind of a win-win situation for both, for solution providers as well as for distribution utilities. And we are finding right now, if you see around I would say around 10 million meters in market is already on in field in market where you find tenders are there from distribution utilities. And going forward, we find this market is going to be exponentially high.
That's an amazing turnaround, isn't it? In terms of starting to understand the value of metering and the value of the data that we might acquire from metering, and the impact it might have on grid management and customer engagement as well. So my next question is kind of related to that, which is, the extent of data that we can collect from a smart connected device, whether it's a meter or whether it's some kind of sensing device on the network to manage load, or an IoT device somewhere. So we're at a time where we're gathering a lot more data from our networks and from our customer activity. So can you within the extent of all the priorities that you have in Tata Power transmission and distribution right now, can you share a little bit about how you might use that data or how you're using that data to make an impact?
So we implemented, in fact, smart metering 2 years back, not because of COVID, but in fact much before COVID started. And in Delhi, since the losses were only 7%, unlike in other distribution utilities in India where the smart metering is getting implemented mainly because of loss reduction, our purpose was entirely different. We are using this data more for network planning, more for load balancing in distribution transformer. We are using and analyzing this data for our outage management system, for our reliability centric maintenance. And now with this data, what we are doing, we are also predicting consumer footfall in our consumer care center. So based on at what time we receive bills from these smart meters, we are using that. Going forward, what we are planning to do is to analyze this data and engage with customer more in terms of optimizing his complete energy requirements. So can we engage more in customer and reducing his overall consumption by providing him few energy management solution? In that direction we have started moving. So first we are covering customers who are in our licensed area. We are engaging with them, we are giving them detailed analysis of their energy consumption and suggesting how they can reduce their energy. And for reducing their monthly consumption, how as a distribution utility we can partner with them and can get revenue which is not from selling electricity but from selling other energy management services. So that's the next phase which we have started in Delhi and Mumbai.
That's really exciting that we can start to open up other marketplace services around energy. And I think that's a really good indicator to the future. Can I ask you a little bit about how have your customers responded to these new insights that you're able to provide that you just talked about? How have they embraced it? Have they become more engaged? What's happened on the customer side?
So we in fact were a little worried because in India, any new such initiatives, if it is not driven very correctly and with deep involvement with customers, normally it takes political shape and then you find it's very difficult to implement such projects. So we were a little worried initially, and that's what the first 6 months we started awareness campaign for consumers that we are going to do this and you are going to get this kind of data. And when we installed those meter at that time only, we had given them a kind of a consumer app which provided them entire data, and in fact shown that this is what you are reading in meter and this is what you are getting on your mobile. Our consumer appreciated this initiative, and they are, I would say, is completely in favor of smart metering. They are finding value in this because every day they find consumption pattern, and we give them many tips on the basis of their energy consumption, that you are going to cross a certain slab, on after that your monthly bill can go high, because in India the tariff is on slab basis. If you consume 200 units, it could be 4 rupees. If you consume 600 rupees, 600 unit, it could be 5 rupees per unit. So we give them advance intimation on the basis of their consumption pattern, that please consume an electricity carefully, you may cross this slab and your monthly bill can then go high. And they are appreciating that kind of connect utility has with them, which was not there earlier. A consumer and utility connect was only that after a month a meter reader used to go and take that monthly reading and it was coming back. But now they find the utility is completely engaged with them and they are loving this engagement, in fact.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. My next question relates to your field teams, your workforce teams. Uh, uh, how, how how are you connecting to your field force, and how are they connecting to the customer? Is there any activity going on in that sense as well?
So, George, uh, we are, I would say, a distribution utility, whether it's Delhi or Mumbai. We tremendously leverage technologies. All our operations, if it is procurement, it's paperless. All our field activities are, all our, I would say, our SCADA DMS is connected with GIS. Our field force management is completely takes the GIS data. Our billing application uses GIS consumer indexing data. Entire field force management, when they do their preventive maintenance, they fill entire maintenance data on their mobile app, and it goes back in where we use SAP and it goes into the PM model. So all activities in our distribution utility are completely integrated and automated, and the workforce is now completely, I would say, aligned to using technologies, and they love using technologies. So when the workforce is involved in starting deploying smart metering, they were already using our field force module, and they find it very easy, in fact. And that would be my suggestion to all utilities in India and others, that use technology. It can improve your productivity by 100, 200% when you are deploying smart meters. It can help you in planning. It will help you in selecting customer. It can help you in knowing where a customer is there at place or not, when you should go to and visit that customer and install meters. It can help you a lot and increase productivity tremendously.
Wow, that's amazing advice, amazing experience and results as well. So um, I'm 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 really happy to hear that, and you know, that's a great story for everybody around the world. Let me ask you a little bit about regulation and ownership, and maybe collaboration with the private sector as well. I just want to share a story from something that we talked about in while we were preparing for this session, which was um, last year your Prime Minister took the unprecedented step to request customers to help manage demand, suggesting that everyone should switch off their lights at 9 p.m. However, I know from talking to you that this left you pretty concerned about what a drop of 12 gigawatts in power demand would do to the grid. Something that you felt might create a risk on stability. So on this occasion, you felt it necessary for you to engage with customers yourself in order to help the customers understand how to create a gradual drop in demand. How did that go, and what did you learn from doing that?
Uh, for the power sector professional, it was very scary when he made this call of 9 minutes at 9 p.m. And he said that for 9 minutes you have to keep your lights off. That time, if we see dip in demand, while the 12 gigawatt was just instantaneous demand at 9 p.m., but few minutes before that, actually demand had dropped, and there was a drop of almost 31 gigawatt in 4 minutes, and that was uh, a big demand in terms of making grid unstable. But I compliment the entire power sector professionals, the way our regional load dispatch center coordinated with central dispatch center. We kept our hydro generation on full generation, and we made sure that the 9 o'clock when demand will go up, they will first drop their generation. But your point on communication, I think it played very vital role. We used social media, we used WhatsApp, we send SMS to all our consumer that this is what the PM call, Prime Minister call is. These are the problems which the grid can have. So how you can help us? You can help us when you are switching off your light. Make sure at least you switch on one appliance. So you switch on two or three fans in your home when you are switching off light so that the grid remain balanced. In a very layman, customer friendly language, we send those messages. And the result was visible because you see the demand was not just a dip at 9 p.m. They started actually before 3 4 minutes, and that is that entire period of 10 minutes when the demand went down, it went up. The 10 minutes is sufficient for the power sector to actually deal with such kind of steep drop. So communication definitely played a very big role, and in fact, in that way, if I say, social media played a big role in our communication to all our customers. But yes,
I,
for a power sector professional, I would say I would never love to make such a demand of switching off light, because grid was, it could have, if it could have gone in other way, the things would have been much difficult.
I think that's one of the best examples I've heard of how customers are engaged in order to and empowered to help with the grid management. I think that if we think about that, the future is very similar to that, in the sense that, you know, we'll have prosumers putting energy back into the grid, smoothing out supply and smoothing out demand, but we'll also be able to mirror or manage the effect of electric vehicle infrastructure when we start putting intense loads through charging our vehicles. I have two quick questions left because the time has just flown by. My first question is really um, the result of deregulation to some extent on distribution companies is opening up that sector to competition, to choice. It's driving innovation, and it's driving real value for money as well. Tell me a little bit about what you think might happen with the distribution companies now that it's opened up a bit more, and it's mirroring a little bit about how it operates in Europe.
So the government has come out with a, new regulation, which is yet to be made public in terms of approved by government. But the draft regulation which has come for public knowledge is they have completely delicensing a retail business of distribution. So any company can go and start distributing electricity. The only condition is they have to buy electricity from the existing company, because the existing company has a long-term power purchase agreement from generators. So those agreements will be transferred to retailer. The retailer has to just go to a regulatory commission, get an approval that okay, now he has a permission to supply electricity to consumer, and he can become a retailer. That's how in Europe you have. So they are completely delicensing retail business in India. Now this will lead to a very good competition in time to come. The reason being, the state distribution utility in India, because of their financial constraints, the reliability of power is an issue. So more private companies will come, they will pressurize these companies to ensure reliability, because for customer they are the front face. So if the customer asks retailer for reliable supply, because for him he is paying for electricity, he will put pressure on network provider. In turn, I am expecting the reliability of supply will improve. And as the reliability of supply will improve, the demand of power in India will go up. And more demand means we expect more dynamic market. We expect more generation will come in play, and the renewable generation which is coming has a lower cost of production. So the overall tariff will also come down once you have more and more demand coming up from the retail side. So retailer will definitely put pressure on network service provider. Consumer will get a choice. So in that way, I'm considering as a very welcome step from federal government, and will get good opportunities for investors who want to be in customer centric business.
Wow, that's a lot of change and a lot of progress, I think.
It's a
I love the fact that we're going to introduce resilience, we're going to introduce affordability, value for money, we're going to accelerate innovation, and the customer is at the heart of all of this, backed up by government policy and regulation. So what an amazing step that is. So certainly something to watch. The my last question, because we're out of time, but my last question is a little bit to do with e-mobility and electric vehicles. I think, in India will emerge as a manufacturing hub for electric vehicles. I think it's a great opportunity from a manufacturing point of view. But your Minister for Transportation, Nitin Gadkari, launched a Go Electric campaign earlier this year, encouraging people about the benefits of e-mobility and the need for charging infrastructure. I'm interested as we wrap this conversation up. I'm interested in what is your view? What is Tata Power Transmission and Distribution's view on how you will respond to the rise of the electric vehicle, if you like?
Electric vehicle, George, in India in next 5 years would be in a very big way. There are two, three reasons for that. One is in India, the cost of fuel is going up, the cost of electricity is going down, and if you see the battery prices which are coming down, it clearly makes sense that the EV in market would be there in next 2 to 3 years. Second, India's overall economy, if you see, the fuel is an import cost of fuel in Indian economy is very high, and we want to actually reduce it. So for that also, the government is pushing e-mobility in a very big way. Why it was not there in last 2 3 years is mainly because it was not still cost effective in terms of conventional combustion engines. What we are finding is shift first is the two wheelers is a big market already existing now for two wheelers, and in India going forward, the all estimates, if you see from different sources, they are expecting around 6 million vehicles would be there by 2026 on EV. They are expecting there would be a growth of around 44% CAGR for EVs. The first mover would be two wheelers, as I mentioned, because in cost is something which Indians are very, very careful. So two wheelers would be the first who will go for EV, and we are seeing that shift there. The second would be the three wheeler and the taxi fleets, which will be there. Many cities have started already adopting EVs as a part of their public transport because that is where the government funding would be there. From Tata Power side, we are considering as a big revenue stream, and we have gone ahead in installing EV chargers across nation in all major cities, because it's something that whether the car will come first or the charging infrastructure will come first, and we believe it's an opportunity to being first in this sector, and we have started installing EV charging infrastructure all across India. We have more than 600 700 EV chargers right now deployed in major cities. We are expecting this is going to be a big revenue stream for Tata Power in time to come. And EV mobility in next 3 to 4 years, you will find in a very big way in Indian market, where you see more and more four-wheelers and new models will be floating. And the cost would be much less than the present cost of EVs and better than life cycle cost terms to IC engines.
Wow, that'll be an amazing journey to watch. I think the whole world will be watching the progress made there. So, Sanjay, our time is up. I can't believe how fast it's gone, but I've thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with you today. I hope our listeners have enjoyed it as well. I think there's so many fantastic sort of insights and lessons and experience that you've shared with us. I just want to say a massive thank you for being part of We3 today. And with that, I will pass back to Erin to wrap us up. And please stay tuned for Lowell's lessons, a short summary of some of the topics we've talked about today. So thank you again, Sanjay. Please stay safe and well, and thank you very much.
Thank you, George. It was pleasure sharing my thoughts with you, and thank you very much. Thank you very much. You take care and be safe.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.